Hey everybody, this is Jay Swan with Mr. Stories Diary. I'm just going to tell you a little experience I had up at Farmington Canyon here in Utah a couple years back. I believe it's paranormally, supernaturally charged in every way, shape, and form. I do know I have heard from an old bus driver friend of mine that the history goes very, very heavily, deeply into witchcraft. Apparently, there were witches there that were sacrificing people, children, and whatnot. There was a whole bunch of, you know, seancing and witchcraft and, you know, a whole bunch of ritual stuff going on there. Um, Come to find out, uh, the Paiutes, the natives, the Paiutes, um, they heavily inhabited not only the Farmington Canyon area, but Farmington City in general was their living space, was their land, was their home. Um, so this brings a theory to my mind of, well, could there possibly be Indian, burial grounds up at the Farmington Canyon? Because my first few times, I went up there with a couple friends, did some adventuring, some hiking. The first time I experienced a disc, like a metallic disc, just like parked on a cliff, just sitting there on a cliff, and it had like blue lighting all around and underneath of it. It was just sitting there on the cliff. It was parked, and I tried to point it out to my friend, and before I was even able to really point it out, it disappeared. It was gone. And then the second time I went up there with a friend, I was telling her, I was like, well, I believe that this canyon is a nesting ground for UFOs and other strange activity. She's like, oh, okay, if you say so. And I took her up to the spot, the rock where I had witnessed that disc, and it wasn't there. But then when I looked further down the canyon, by my surprise, I was startled to see a green blob hovering above the pine trees, and she couldn't believe it. I said, look at that. What is that?" And it lifted up above the trees. It was a metallic disc. Sure enough, it was a metallic disc, and it lifted up above the trees, and then it came bolting at us, and we took off. We took off like a bat out of hell. We were flying down that mountain, down that trail, 100 miles per hour. Got in our car and we zipped off. But those are just a few crazy experiences I've had there. And the first time I went up there with a friend, there was a DUI check. There were all these sheriff deputies at the top of the road, and they stopped us. They asked for our identification, gave them our identification, and then before we were able to actually drive up a little ways to the parking lot, the sheriff walks up to the car and has us roll the window down and says, "Hey, you are aware of what happens in this canyon, right?" And we're like, "What? What happens?" And he's like, "Well, this canyon is very famous for disappearances and suicides." I'm like, "What? Are you serious?" I could understand the suicide part, but the disappearance, the random disappearing part. And then that night, I end up seeing that UFO parked on the cliff. I'm like, just piecing everything together. I mean, could there be abductions going on there? I mean, it is a possibility. There could be abductions. Um, but every time I've been up there, there's been weird things that have occurred, like the sound of rocks being thrown at us, the sound of shuffling as if something's running towards us, weird sounds in the distance. One time I went up there with a couple buddies, and there were all these eyes in the trees that were moving around. I mean, there were tons of them. I don't know if those were demonic, because I did feel a demonic presence. I don't know if those were like demons or if they were like raccoons, but there was like 50 of them, 50 sets of eyes just everywhere. Um, so yeah, that gives you a nice little inside of Farmington Canyon here in Utah. You know, if you want to explore it yourself, feel free, but do be very wary and be aware that, you know, the police have warned us that there are disappearances and suicides happening in that canyon. And apparently it's more frequent. So, yeah, share this far and wide.